fire popped, spitting embers into the twilight air of the narrow canyon. Silas watched them dance, each a tiny spark against the looming sandstone walls. Around the fire, Jeb Barlow paced, his face a roadmap of anxiety etched under the flickering light. Bart and Finn, Barlow's remaining henchmen, shifted nervously, their hands instinctively hovering near their weapons. "She's a stubborn mare," Silas, Deputy Hayes said, his voice strained from the bullet wound in his leg. He leaned against a rock, wincing with each movement. Bess could have outrun them easily. Silas grunted in agreement, his gaze fixed on Barlow. "He's desperate, Hayes. Lost the stagecoach money, lost his men. He's cornered." Barlow stopped pacing and fixed Silas with a venomous stare. "You think you're so righteous, don't you, Silas? Think you can play judge and jury in this territory?" "Justice finds a way, Barlow," Silas replied, his voice low and steady, "whether you like it or not." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, her movements as silent as the desert wind. Nahka, the Apache shaman, stood between the firelight and Barlow, her eyes dark and knowing. "The spirits are restless," she said, her voice a melodic whisper. "The land cries out in pain." Barlow snarled. "What do you want, old woman? Say out of this." Nahka ignored him, her gaze fixed on Silas. "He seeks not just the money, but a release, a way to silence the voices." She gestured towards Barlow with a long, slender finger. "He carries a darkness within him, Silas. A darkness that threatens to consume all." Silas felt a pain of unease. Nahka's words resonated with a truth he couldn't deny. Barlow wasn't just a thief. He was a man driven by something deeper, something far more sinister. "He has a girl," Barlow sneered, noticing Silas's reaction. "Deputy Hayes' sister. Thought you should know, Silas. Maybe that's a little something to motivate you." Hayes' face drained of colour. "Don't you dare threaten my sister, Barlow." Silas's hand instinctively tightened around the grip of his cold peacemaker. He knew he couldn't play a hero. Barlow was using a hostage. This was no longer about justice, but about survival. "Let her go, Barlow," Silas said, his voice laced with a warning. "And maybe, just maybe, you can walk away from this." Barlow laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think I'm a fool, Silas? I know you would shoot me if I have her. You're too soft, too caught up in your own brand of morality." He jerked his head towards the cave entrance shrouded in shadow. "She's in there." Silas felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. This was a trap. He could feel it in his bones. But he had no choice. He couldn't abandon Hayes, couldn't abandon the girl. "Stay here, Hayes," Silas said, his voice barely a whisper. "Protect the horses." He took a slow, deliberate step towards the cave entrance. "I'll get her." As he entered the darkness, he heard Nahka's voice, a soft murmur on the wind. "Be warned, Silas. The spirits are fickle. Trust not what you see, but what you feel." The cave was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something ancient and unsettling. A single torch flickered on the far wall, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on his eyes. He saw her then, a young woman tied to a rough-hewn wooden post. Hayes' sister, Mary. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear, but relief quickly washed over her face. "Silas," she whispered. He said, if you came, he's let me go." Just as he reached out to untie her, a voice echoed from behind him. "Foolish Silas, you fell right into my trap." He spun around to see Barlow standing in the entrance, a cruel smile twisting his lips. Behind him, Bart and Finn emerged from the shadows, their weapons drawn. "I knew you couldn't resist," Barlow said, his voice dripping with malice. "You're a good man, Silas, but you're also predictable." Suddenly, a whirlwind of motion erupted in the cave. Nahka appeared seemingly out of nowhere, a blur of movement and primal energy. She moved with the grace of a desert cat, disarming Bart and Finn with swift, precise movements. "The spirits have spoken," she said, her voice slow and menacing. "They demand justice." Before Silas could react, Nahka turned her attention to Barlow. She moved with incredible speed, and Silas saw a flash of metal, a ceremonial dagger sheathed in turquoise and feathers. There was a single, echoing cry, and then Barlow collapsed to the ground, the dagger buried deep in his chest. The cave fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the torchlight. Silas stared at Nahka, his mind reeling from what he had just witnessed. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Why did you kill him?" Nahka looked at him, her eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to span centuries. "He was a vessel, Silas, a conduit for a darkness that threatened to consume this land. The spirits have cleansed it, but the battle is far from over." She looked past Silas towards the cave entrance. "There are others like him, Silas, men and women driven by greed and desperation. They are the symptoms of a deeper sickness that festers within this territory. Be warned, Silas. Your work is far from done." She turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Silas alone with Mary and the body of Jeb Barlow. What just happened? Mary stammered, her voice trembling. Silas looked at her, his face grim. It's a long story, Mary, and it's just beginning. He paused, then added, there's something you need to know. He looked back at the darkness from where Nahka had disappeared. I think someone is still watching us. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows that danced on the cave walls. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the scent of rain and the whispers of ancient spirits. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over, and Silas knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the restless spirits of the Superstition Mountains were not yet at peace.